Hello everybody, this is Bud of Bud Labs, and in this video I will demonstrate this program, ICA, which is something I've been working on for the last couple of months or so now. It was, as I mentioned in an earlier video here, I've had this on like the back burner, or how to call it, or it's been in a testing phase where I simply didn't touch the code, only use the program itself. And now I am back at working at the code a bit, but I really feel the need to get this video out of my system. I cannot stop thinking about the video, meaning I cannot really focus on the code. So I need to make this video, and here it is. Welcome. The program, ICA, named after dancehall reggae artist Ika Mouse, because this is a mouse program. It lets you create but a lot more advanced than has been possible before on Linux key mappings for the mouse. So you can create like combinations like holding the right mouse button and wheel up. This is, by the way, auto hotkey code, because this is yet again a recreation of my old Windows Rise functionality that I had back then. And in auto hotkey, all of this was built into the programming language, so just a single line in auto hotkey would give you more or less all the functionality that this C program provides here. But what it boils down to is I have been missing the ability to set up key bindings on the mouse, essentially. And more specifically, switching tabs by holding the right mouse button and scrolling. And now I can do that. I'm doing it now and it works. It's super responsive, smooth. Just works. It feels so good to finally have this functionality back. And as you can see, you can not just scroll. You can also, if I hold right mouse button and press middle button, it will close the current tab, and that also works now. So you can manage your tabs with just the mouse. It's great. And I can also do this, toggle the tab bar here with just the mouse, and it works fine. And it works by using this configuration file, which is a custom config syntax for this program. It's quite straightforward. You just write the mouse button combination, which is a 2-button combination or 1 button. I guess it's not a combination then. But you cannot do 3-button combinators and stuff like that. Only 2 buttons and no modifiers. So you cannot have like a shift right button scroll up. You cannot do that. I will get back to why. You can set up a device blacklist. I get back to what that means also. And you can also specify window rules, which is a quite cool feature, if I may say so myself, that you can have specific actions happening depending on what window is active. So for example, I have this right button, left button is Alt X here in Brave, meaning that it will toggle the tab bar. Then I have right button, L button in Sublime is Control Alt S. So if I go to Sublime and press the same mouse button here, it sends now Control Alt S, which toggles the sidebar here. And I also have it in VS Code. Stupid VS Code, sometimes you have to toggle the window like that when it's tabbed. But it's the same, so I can have the same mouse button combination doing different things for different windows, as you can see. And very important is that I also have the ability to blacklist specific buttons in specific windows, because sometimes this functionality actually gets problematic and there is no good way getting around it other than simply blacklisting the functionality. So that is what you can do with the configuration. You can also actually send a command line option to toggle. Here is a terminal, so if I do, now I have to find the full path here, cd git lab ICA, and then we do build ICA -t. this will send a toggle signal thing here, which means it will disable all of the, you see now it's toggled enable disable off, and now none of the configuration is active. It's like blacklisting everything, and you can toggle it back. And you see I do this from a different terminal, so you could set up a key binding in i3 or something like that as a escape hatch if something, if it stops working or something like that, you know. Because if this becomes a problem, it may actually lock up your mouse functionality in a way. I think the best way to illustrate this is with this shattered pixel dungeon, where I blacklist the right mouse button. Or you know what? Let's first explain why there is no better way around this, and how it's actually set up. You see in the configuration here, I have both left button and right button combinations here, and right mouse button combinations, as I explained, I use for tab management and the sidebar management, so to speak. That is how I have set it up. Left button is more for Windows, so I have key bindings in i3 super tab. I press it on the keyboard to switch tabs, but now I can also hold left mouse button and scroll, and that will also switch tabs. And it's super comfy to have this. These two buttons actually work quite differently, or specifically the left button is an outlier, because you can also set up use the back button, which I call B button in the configuration, but you can actually also type button 8. Button 8 and B button are the same thing. So if whatever, B button, you can use that, back button that is, you can use that as a modifier if you want to, and create combinations with that as well, and also forward button and left button and right button, but not the middle button, because that's weird. And they all work the same except for the left mouse button, because the left mouse button, it is important for normal left button behavior. You don't want to break that in any way possible, you know, because you use the left mouse button. You don't want to block the left mouse button functionality, because that would essentially mean that you cannot select text and drag things around if you blocked it. But with right mouse button, you actually want to block the input. So you can see here, if we maybe start by toggling this, so now it's not active, and now right mouse button is not blocked or anything. If I press right mouse button, it brings up the context menu, as everyone knows, you know, that's how right mouse button works. And it's you all probably use it. It's very useful in some cases. Yeah, we don't have to get into details on why the right mouse button is important and useful. But when you think about it, you usually probably only use it to right click stuff sometimes. And maybe sometimes you control right click or whatever. But it's quite rare that you use the right mouse button as you use the left mouse button, which is often used to drag things around and stuff like that. But in some games, for example this Shattered Pixel Dungeon game here, I hold right mouse button to pan the view. And this is something that is not completely unheard of. It's quite common in other games as well, specifically, but also advanced graphic applications like Blender and CAD programs and stuff often have this hold right mouse button and dragging functionality. And you cannot have both. You cannot both drag and also block the context menu, because that is what you want to do if you want to have a button combination like this. I don't want to always see the right click menu here every time I want to send a right button scroll up. So what I do in this program is actually, you can see it in the terminal, when I right click, we can see here that it say button 3 set as potential modifier blocking original click, and it actually if I release the mouse button, it sends a fake right button click, and that means it's also the same in Shattered Pixel Dungeon, except that I have blacklisted it, so it doesn't. We can see that button 3 blacklisted on window passing through completely. But if I remove this window rule from the configuration, there is the testing configuration thing here. I have to restart the program, and I can remove this blacklist and run the program again. And now when I press right mouse button in this game, the game still works, of course, like the other normal functionality. But as soon as I hold the right mouse button, you see it's blocked, set as a potential blocker. So now I cannot drag with the right mouse button, and that is a quite serious drawback. And I cannot do what I do with the left mouse button, where I have actually tried to really pay attention with the code here and make it so that it always pass through the click. And it actually doesn't matter if you pass through a click. It doesn't bring up a menu or something like that. So it is actually very rarely a problem. You can even, I've noticed, click on a link and still send off a combinator, a mouse combinator. I'm holding left mouse button and scrolling now. And it doesn't even follow the link until you release the mouse button, because that is how left mouse button work. But the right mouse button and context menus, they work the other way around. It actually brings up the menu when you press. So it doesn't bring up the menu on release by default, and this is how it works in most applications, I have noticed now. I also actually noticed this little extra functionality, which at least works in Brave, probably other programs as well, is that you can, if I right click and I'm holding right mouse button now, I can actually select an item in the menu and release right mouse button without left clicking to select an item. I didn't even know this until yesterday when I discovered it, but because I have always, when I select something in the right mouse button menu, I click and then I select and then I press the left mouse button, and that's how I have been using menus. But obviously I've been using them wrong, maybe, but since you can just select and release, that's in a way faster, a faster way of doing it. But that will not work now with this program running in the background, since now the menu is not appearing when you click. It only appears when you release the right mouse button, and that means you have already released the right mouse button and cannot select by releasing it again, since the button is already released. So you have to do the heavy burden of left mouse button click the item in the menu that you want to select. You can hear I'm a bit sarcastic. I don't think this makes any difference whatsoever, to be honest, but that's something that gets slightly different. And there, as far as I can tell, there is like no way around it. I could have the right mouse button work as the left mouse button and always just normally pass through right button functionality, but that would bring up like context menus all over the place when you actually just want to fire off these key combinators. Another thing that I also made sure to do was that if we use a keyboard or a mouse button combination here, so now I'm holding right mouse button. God damn it. Is it off? Is it on? Just me. Holding right mouse button, scrolling, and it switches tabs, as you can see. And when I release the mouse button now, it doesn't bring up the menu. So if you hold the right mouse button and fire off one of these key bindings, it will also not send a fake click once you're done, because you're not in the right clicking business, you are in the tab switching business kind of stuff. So and this is something I made sure to have it behave like that. Another blacklist item I have here in my configuration file is i3 frame, because at least I am used to using right mouse button to resize specifically tabbed windows. Now when I think about it, I actually think there is an issue with floating windows. You cannot resize them. You cannot resize floating windows. I'm not sure you can actually resize it. No, you should be able to resize this. But there is something with... yeah. Now I have toggled the state off. There is something with floating windows actually that I need to look into. It doesn't... I know what it is. Yes, this is something. I should write it down in my hey note here. Resizing floating windows doesn't work. This might actually be really tricky to do in a window agnostic way. But window manager agnostic way. Yeah, I got sidetracked there, but it's an important realization that I had completely forgot. So now that's good. That's good. But whatever. I resize tiling windows all the time by holding the right mouse button and dragging the title bar. You can actually just use the left mouse button to drag the title bar. I think you can do. Or I don't remember how the defaults in i3 is set up now, because it might actually be that if you drag with the left mouse button, it will initiate a tiling drag of that window. I think you have to make a configuration setting to have it be that you resize with the mouse button or whatever. But I have always, for some reason, used right mouse button to resize tiling windows. And it's the same thing here. It's a right click drag operation, meaning that for this to actually work, you have to blacklist it, the i3 frame window, which is the instance name of the window decorations. So if I remove this blacklist and restart the program, you will see now I cannot resize. So that also needs to be blacklisted. Oops. And you can also, if it comes up, I really don't think it will it will be a problem with any other button, but you can blacklist the other buttons as well. And that is basically it, this program. The last thing I should mention here, and it's also something I'm working on to make this a little bit better. There are some issues with this device blacklist, but it kind of works. If I stop this program, and if we can do this to get a full terminal output here. When I start the program, and I can see the debug output here, where it because this program uses like a quite low level method of capturing mouse events here. So it needs to hook up to the actual mouse device, and there have been times when I have started this when it have selected the wrong device here. You see here key D virtual pointer is a different blacklisted device because I have key D in my device blacklist here. And so that is like a virtual, I don't want to get into any details about what it actually is, but I have a program called key D running in the background that creates a virtual mouse pointer that could be mistaken for your actual mouse. And it's important that this program hooks up to the correct mouse device. So what you can do is just look at these strings in parentheses here, and that is how you can build your blacklist. And you can have multiple, as it is now. This is what I want to fix a bit. As it is now, if you want to add more entries to this device blacklist, you simply separate them by a space. But that means that you cannot have strings that have space in them, and I would actually like that, so you could actually put quotes around each item, or if it's comma separated instead or something like that. I will write it down in the documentation when this is finalized, but this actually works as it is now. It blocks key D and it will never get selected. It actually will never get selected anyways either, because you can see, or if we remove the blacklist there, you will see that it will get a lower score. Because there is like a primitive scoring system here. You can see found mouse candidate key D virtual pointer score 8, found mouse candidate SteelSeries Rival 300 gaming mouse score 18. And the reason this one gets higher score is that it have the word mouse in the name. But there are other things that give score. For example, if it has a right button, a left button, a scroll wheel, and back button, and stuff like that, it increases the score, trying to make sure that we grab an actual mouse. But it is not a bulletproof system at all, this. And I will look into this in greater detail and try to improve it further in the future. And I just imagine, I haven't tested it myself, but I imagine if you have a setup with, for example, a laptop that is connected in a docking station or something, you maybe have both a mouse and a trackpad and maybe a track point connected, you know. It's important that it selects the correct device in such scenarios, I imagine, for this to work. But once it's set up and is working, it should just be easy to use this. There are stuff left to do with it to make it like work perfectly. There are still some minor issues. I have been using this daily, like all the time, and I do use it all the time. Just this ability to switch, toggle the sidebar. And also, did I mention that in the window rules I have this specific key binding, right button, left button. I have set that up for both Brave, Visual Studio Code, and Sublime Text. And it, with window rules, it sends different key bindings to the different applications. So in Brave, I toggle the tab bar. In Sublime, I toggle the sidebar. The reason it was laggy in Sublime here is because it's not a problem with my program. That's how Sublime works. You have to actually first activate the sidebar to be able to toggle it and stuff like that. So it might look like it is lagging a bit, but it works as expected. VS Code, I also have a key binding for toggling the sidebar. And it's really nice to do this with the mouse. You know, sometimes you have code, a complicated code file with long lines, and you have for some reason the sidebar, and god damn it, now I have to, no, you don't have to, you can just hide the sidebar, now you can read everything. And it makes so much sense to have some of this functionality on the mouse. Haters gonna hate, because haters hate this setup, because I don't need it, because the mouse is actually, that is cringe. You use keyboard shortcuts, is actually much more ergonomic and fast than using the mouse anyways. But it doesn't mean that you can't use both, you know. Why not make the mouse 10 times more powerful? Because it can, and it should actually be able to do this. This is a massive workflow improvement, in my opinion, to have these simple key bindings available. And of course, I will not get into any details here, but I have always, or not always, but for many years, I have remapped the back button to backspace. And that is super cool to do, but no one understands me, so I can select text with the mouse, press back button, and that deletes it. And now this remapping is done with ICA. But the problem by having, for example, back button remap to backspace is that normal back button behavior will not work, you know, and you have to manually set up key bindings for them. So if I go into my in Thunar, I can press back button to go back, but what is actually happening is that I press backspace. I can also press backspace on the keyboard, and it does the same thing. And to achieve this, I had to manually go into the Thunar hotkeys and set up a hotkey for backspace to open parent. Let's see if we can find it here now. It should be here somewhere. Whatever. it doesn't matter. I had to manually change the key binding here, and same thing with the browsers. Actually, you have to manually make sure that backspace actually navigates back. And in browsers, it works kind of. There is some more to it in the browser. For example, if you are in an input field and press backspace, it will not navigate back. But when an input field is not active and I press backspace, it will go back in the history. And so using backspace or using back button as backspace, it actually requires some work to make it work everywhere. I have used this for so long, so I'm just used to, when I go back in the history, I make sure that a input field is not active. This is not a problem for me at all, but I think it might, you will notice annoyances like that you don't navigate back and you start deleting stuff in your input field or whatever when you intended to navigate back and stuff like that. But what I want to get to is that with ICA and these window rules is that you could just do this remapping only for programs where it is really where it really matters, which is, for example, text editors. So you could set it up to only be backspace in Sublime, because this is where it makes the most sense, you know, in a text editor. To well, now I am in command mode, but if I select text and then I can just press backspace and that deletes it. That's super useful in a text editor. But in my opinion, it's actually useful everywhere because input boxes are everywhere. Even if in a file manager you can bring up a menu like this and I can still press backspace here, you know. So I have this globally, but I understand that most people don't want to do that. And with ICA, you can have a window rule and only try it out where it actually matters, the text editor. For example, I will now spend some more time here and fine-tune this application, trying to really get to the bottom of some of the bugs. I have actually now this repository here. It looks a bit different from what I have in VS Code here now. I have moved all the source files into a src directory. I have a data directory with the default configuration, and I also updated the make file quite a bit here. So I have actually done quite a lot of changes without pushing here now in the last 2 days. Mostly moving files around and stuff like that. But I am in the mode here where I am trying to get this into a more or less alpha release state. But you can of course just try it out. I will push the changes here as soon as I have done the video, so you can do a make install and try this program yourself if you want to. And I'm very interested in hearing feedback on both the functionality, configuration system, and the source code itself, because yet again I have done this very much with the AI assistance set up here. So I kind of don't want to say that I don't understand this code myself, but in a way there are parts of it that is like borderline of what I understand is going on in a way, and it sometimes it looks like it is like different practices, or how to say it. It's like in one way I am quite happy with this source code. It seems to be quite suckless, you know. It's only 1,000 lines long here, the actual program, and the parser, the configuration parser is 600 lines as well here, because that is almost as complicated to create a custom configuration syntax, which is in a way also maybe if you have any good ideas. But the thing is, I don't like any of the configuration syntaxes that exist, and I want this to just be simple. We don't need to use any type of nested blocks really, and we don't need to have any programming functionality in it. So why not create my own syntax, I thought. But maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe I should use JSON or something instead. I don't know. I think this works fine. and I don't care if it needs 600 crazy lines of code to achieve that syntax. Even if you use like a third-party JSON library, then you bloat the program in that way instead. So it just limits, or that's one benefit at least, that it's one less dependency. There is no like JSON library needed for this. By the way, the libraries needed are, it is more or less only XCB libraries, and it uses evdev, which is some kind of a event library for listening to like low level input device events. So this operates actually on a lower level than the display manager. So in theory, it is not a big deal to port this program, ICA, to actually work on Wayland, in theory. But in reality, that would mean that you would basically have to get rid of all the window rules, functionality and stuff like that. And there is actually more than just window rules going on in the code, because I need to figure out exactly what window to send the key binding. So, but the core functionality is actually using this evdev stuff, which should be compatible with Wayland. But it doesn't work on Wayland, because the program as it is now is written a lot with the XCB functionality as well. But I couldn't get like button grabs to work reliably. I had to use this low-level library here to reliably get the correct mouse button combinations working and getting this pass-through stuff working correctly. I needed really fine-grained control of how the mouse worked when we were grabbing the keys and stuff like that. So, but everything seems to work. It's just like polish now, but it's the last 5% take 95% of the effort to achieve. So there's probably many hours left here before I'm satisfied completely with this program. But I'm very, very happy with how it works now. As I think I said it in the beginning, right? That this is probably my the best thing I have done for Linux desktop, actually. And I have done quite a few things, and I believe this might be like the best contribution I have managed to create. To shame it wasn't me who created it and some stupid AI robot, but at least it was I who wrote the prompts, Such a weird timeline. PewDiePie is using Linux and a robot is rising my system. And I couldn't be happier. Thank you for watching, everybody. Next video will probably be about my AI workflow. I was thinking about maybe we should revisit this program I showed you in the last video, I believe. I think I call it Vibe Info, which was this simple GTK2 program that lists information about the currently active window. I shouldn't get too sidetracked here, but I was thinking maybe restarting this project altogether, probably do it in GTK3 instead of GTK2, even if I really want to use GTK2, but there are issues doing that, specifically with AI assistance. I will get back to this in that video and explain some of my findings about how what works and what doesn't and stuff like that, and how you can if you want to try this out, some things to avoid, which for example is like using a 15-year-old version of a still continued library, because that will just of course confuse the language model. It might give you like GTK3 or maybe even GTK4 examples and snippets, and it will not, you see where this is going. But it is possible if you really prompt well and tell it, hey, make sure the code you give me is GTK2. probably will work, maybe. Whatever. That is what I thought we could do in the next video at least. Restarting this project completely from scratch and see how far we get, and try to do as much as possible by just prompting, basically. And I can show you like the setup I use with like a very important part of this whole process is to use Git, or a version control system, but that is essentially Git, you know. I think that's quite important to keep in mind if you want to experiment with this stuff. It will probably be it's in theory it's a good video topic. It will probably be a lot more complicated to actually make that video, but I will try, and I see you there. Have a great day, everybody. Bud Lab signing out. Bye.